Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this week's Data Talk session. My name is Daphne van Hesteren, and I will be your host today. This is already our 6th Data Talk session, and if you're interested, you can find our previous sessions online on our YouTube channels. During the next half hour, we will talk about AI and journalism. And I'm delighted to present to you that we have 2 guests today, all the way from Argentina, where it's really early, so thank you very much for joining us today. We have Mathias-Felipe de Lima-Santos and Florencia Coelho, and I hope I pronounced it correctly.
Okay.
They are both working for La Nacion, one of the largest newspapers in Argentina. And earlier this year, they experimented with AI technologies to improve their news reporting. And today they will tell us all about it. But before we dive right in, maybe you can shortly introduce yourself to everyone here.
Yeah. Okay. So my name is Mathias-Felipe. I'm originally from Brazil, but I'm living right now in Spain. I'm a researcher at the University of Navarra under the JOT project, that is Horizon 2020. We are 15 researchers in different organizations. So we are in universities, in media organizations, news startups, and we are trying to investigate or to research the different aspects that are relate to the future of journalism and combine not only computer science, but also the new technologies that are improving or giving tools to improve the journalism. Especially me, I'm researching about data journalism. So I have colleagues that are researching, for example, collaborative journalism, automated journalism. So yeah, more or less is like that. And this year, from January to March, before the pandemic, I was in La Nacion because it's part of this project that we spent some time in news organizations. And this year it should be around different organizations, but then the pandemic came and then changed a bit. So yeah, and then I let the floor for Florencia, but thank you for having us here. And it's a pleasure to share our project with you.
Great, thanks.
Okay. I'm Flor. I work at La Nacion since 2006 as new media research and trainer. Last year, I spent 10 months at Stanford University with a JSK Fellowship for Journalists, researching on AI. I'm leaving here, then we are going to share the presentation, so you will have links to all the examples provided. So at Stanford, should I start or not the presentation?
Yeah, sure. You prepare the presentation, and I want to leave the floor to you guys, and then afterwards I think there should be room for some questions afterwards, right?
Okay.
Okay.
So I collected in this presentation examples relating to satellite imagery and the use of some artificial intelligence techniques. Like I first discovered these 2 examples at Stanford, how they use machine learning to help environmental monitoring and enforcement, detecting farms for swine and poultry. And then another project that was the inspiration for La Nacion's project on satellite imagery, that it was called Deep Solar Database, where they map every single solar panel in the United States, Stanford researchers. And also I was at a conference that is called Women in Data Science, where there was a hackathon and they were inviting a competition to try to detect images with oil palm plantations. Then I step up on this research from Amnesty International, how they use machine learning, transfer learning, and crowdsourcing to try to find villages that were destroyed because of civil war in Darfur, Sudan. I'm leaving all the links so you can are interested in different of one of these cases. We love this case, this project from Ukraine. It's called Leprosy of the Land, and it have won data awards. And we met with Mati, one of the main developers, Anatoly. Here is his Twitter handle. And there are two links where you can see how they work with two different algorithms to try to detect illegal amber mining. The first link, you go to the project itself, and in the second, there is a Quartz AI Studio behind the scenes explanation. I also found a project from Reuters Graphics and from AP. Reuters used satellite imagery that used like computer vision to try to track the expansion in South China Sea, where they are fighting like 6 countries to, they are building like concrete islands, like their strategic position, no, in that area. And to the right, there is an example that won the Pulitzer Prize for Public Service in 2016, and how they have used satellite imagery from Digital Globe to try to find sea vessels that hosted slaves for the fishing industry, no? And how the computer vision of Digital Globe helped them to get sharper images and follow the sea vessels tracks. And so that's like the inspirations from different newsrooms around the world. And so I think we are okay with time. And Mati, if you want, we can start with Proyecto Naturaleza. Is one of the projects of our data team to try to monitor the climate crisis and the biodiversity crisis with data from IPCC, IPBES, and other facts. So it's a very data related project, and we decided to embrace it. And okay, so when I returned from Stanford, and there was the launch of Proyecto Naturaleza, the nature project in Spanish, like trying to do the solar farms or panels, it was one of my returning goals. And thanks to Mati and the collaboration of other journalists or students, we could make it happen. Mati, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, so I went to Argentina in January, and then for was like after 6 months, if I'm not wrong, she was in Stanford studying AI, and she was like passionate about that. And then she said to me, "Oh, look, I saw this project that we are presenting here, and I really wanna map the solar panels here in Argentina." And then I was, okay, so let's see how we can do that. So I start studying and checking about all these projects that we present, and then how they did. And then we face lots of challenges that we decide to reduce the scope from solar panels to solar farms, because there was something that was happening in Argentina, that was the previous government, they began a project to bring more renewable energy to the country. So not only solar, but also wind power and even nuclear. And so, yeah. And then we said, okay, let's focus on solar farms and then try to track how is the constructions of them. And then was this project that she was mentioning about, the new editorial brand called Naturaleza, that is nature in English. So the first step we are trying to understand better this scope that we had. So we talked with specialists that include like stakeholders that was involved in this project, people that work in this area of renewable energy. And then we had like one very important day that was like data day that we called, that we brought then to the newsroom, and like this different four people talking about this project, how they start and the challenge, and what are the auditions, because it was several auditions with different parts. Try to understand this better for we then design this project. And then we also mentioned, we're going to mention about this hackathon that we have to check these data points that we are going to mention, in the next slide. So, yeah. So the first thing that we need was the satellite imagery, and this is very hard to have access. So the first thing that we discovered that is very expensive And for a newsroom, it's really hard to have access. And there is one thing that is very important, because we have a couple of satellites that are around our orbit, and the spatial resolution plays an important role on that. Because if you want to map a solar panel, you need really small resolution or high resolution. In this case, that is like 0.3 meters, and then you can have more detail, you know. But in our case, we are checking the options, and then we discover that Europe, using the ESA project, they have like this Sentinel-2. There are 2 satellites that are running around the orbit, and the resolution is not so high, but it's free, and they have a high frequency. That is another important aspect that we need. So then we decide, okay, so as we don't have access to better satellite imagery, we're going to use this one, and then that's the reason we reduce our scope to solar panels. But next. But then we realized that we also could have access to planet that has better resolution, but they don't provide a high, how can I say, an
A big
extensive
area.
area. Yeah.
Yes.
Because what happened is, like, it's in the educational and research program. So they have, like, if I'm not wrong, 10,000 kilometers, square kilometers, if I'm not wrong. And then we decide, okay, so we're going to use the Copernicus, the satellite from Europe, that's Sentinel-2, to analyze. And then we use the planet to check if the data is correct. So we combine both satellite images to have a better analysis from our data. And what else I want to also add is, like, the frequency of the Copernicus and the planet are, you know, they run the globe like every week. So we have images that you can, you know, the update is frequent. So you can have, for example, if there is one day that we have clouds, so we can get from the next day or even the following week. So that's the reason it was good to have these images. Why we don't use Google? Because we have a serious problem, because Argentina is a huge country. And Google, they, if you look the Stanford project, they use Google because the countries that, you know, for example, US, UK, and other countries that are play an important role in the world, they have the frequency of images is it's better than the countries that are not the main ones. So that's the reason
And
we
not all
also
the
do this.
areas are covered in Google Maps.
Yeah, exactly.
So maybe they only go 1 year or every 2 years. So we couldn't rely on Google Maps.
Yeah. Yeah.
For
Next.
Argentina.
And then, so Argentina has 2.5 million, if I'm not wrong.
Million.
Million square kilometers area, is top 10 biggest country in the world. So to analyze that, we collect the images from Sentinel-2, and then we divide in tiles of 100 versus 100 pixels. So it was like almost 11,000 images to train our model. So our model, AI model, was based on computer vision. So we try to use what we can do with the eye. So they try to analyze, identify these solar farms. As you can see here in the picture, solar farms has a format that's really easy to identify by eye, but for a computer it's very hard, because you can easily you know,
confuse it
hard,
with a farm.
Yeah, you can. It's
not
hard to
solar.
distinguish from crop
agriculture production.
Yeah, so that's the reason we had to use the infrared versions of this image instead of the ones that we can see, the RGB, that is the red, green, blue. So as I said, it was why we had to collaborate with other people, because it was we need an infrastructure that we didn't have in the newsroom, because we need to use external servers. So we found a startup that could help us with that. So we train like third hours using third GPUs. So they use their infrastructure for us. And then the algorithm had a precision of 94%. So it was a really good precision. So we could identify what was a solar farm from was a crop field. Yes, next. So what we found when you publish the stories that you can see here, part of the story here on the screen, you can see that it was like we found like 20 solar farms in full operations, and then we found other 2 private solar farms that it was not, they don't belong to the government. So that was good. That proved that our algorithm was running good. And also we found that they have a big solar farm that they call Cauchari here. And that was in the project of the government. That was the big announcement, because it would be the biggest, the major solar farm in the region, I mean the Latin American region. And then we could map that it was basically done, but it was not in full operation. So basically they were delivering what they promised, but we could find that some of were not in operation yet. But was because the plan that they had was to connect one, for example, one solar farm with a wind farm for the transmission of the energy, because it's a huge country. So you need to connect these stations to get the energy to the main points. So yeah, next. So once we had like all these points, before we get the final result, we had like a hackathon where we could check the points, because what happened is we had data from Argentina that the government provides some points that they have solar farms, but it was not enough to train our models. So what we did was we got data from what's the name? Sorry, I forgot.
OpenStreetMap.
OpenStreetMap.
Because Chile, there weren't enough images of solar farms from Argentina to train the model. So the Nacion Labs, our partner in this project, like had the idea to go to Chile, where the region is similar, is our neighbor country, and they have a good development of solar farms. So they use also images from Chile to train the model.
Yeah, and then we had this day that we check all the images to classify them as if it was a solar farm or not, because in our model you need to train with solar farms and things that are not solar farms for the algorithm to understand and try to identify them. And then this was a half-day hackathon that we had in Nacion, and then we brought the Nacion data team and this startup that's called Dimension, and then we checked the images. And after we processed, we got this table that shows most of the solar farms that we identify, and then we compile this data and combine them with the data from the government, so we could have the capacity, the right position, check if it was the one that we found, for example, the Cauchari that I mentioned was exactly the Cauchari. So when we cross this database, we could identify if it was like delivering. And I think that's it. There is another slide.
Yes, here are our Twitter handles, and we are ready for questions if you have one. I think that we have to finish like now.
Well, first of all, thanks for all the information. Really interesting. I think I first want to give the floor to anyone who has already a question before I dive in. So is there anyone who would like to ask something?
No question is stupid.
No
like
question.
These are very difficult concepts.
Yeah.
And so it took me a year at Stanford to try to understand some of these. So don't feel.
We have one question.
Don't be shy to ask.
Yeah, to ask anything. Well, there's a question in the chat. Why is a newspaper searching on solar panels or farms?
Okay, I can answer that. Like when I was at Stanford, I discovered the solar panels project. And when I returned to La Nacion from this year out, we were just launching the nature project that has to do with a climate crisis and a biodiversity crisis. So renewable energy was a topic of main interest for us. So I tried to make them ends meet and work in a project that had some AI and climate change focus. So that's why, because we have a strategy that is to work on nature projects to report on that. And we are part of an alliance that is international, covering climate now. There are more than, I think, 200 news outlets around the world, and it was founded by Columbia Journalism Review from Columbia University in New York, and The Nation, that is a media in the United States. So I think that, and why we search for these solar farms, because the government that was ruling the last 5 years, for 4 years, they have signed the Paris Agreement, and so we have commitments of to develop our energy resources with renewable energies, no? So to try to diminish the oil, gas sources and try to use wind, aeolic power or solar power. So that's why.
Yeah, it was one of the great promises from the previous government, and then they said like this was they used to buy energy from the neighbor countries. So by doing that, they didn't need to buy the energy from the neighbor countries, and also they are moving towards this Paris Agreement that they signed.
The problem is now with the economic crisis worldwide, and in Argentina, we are the largest debtor of the International Monetary Fund. Like our inflation, I think, is the third largest of the world. So although we have excellent natural resources for solar energy and wind energy, the problem is who's going to pay the financing of these projects. No, so I think that is going to diminish the speed of the adoption of new solar farms creation and connecting the farms through the devices needed to make the energy arrive to other destinations that the provinces where they're actually producing the energy. I don't know if I have been clear with the answer.
I think,
Yes, definitely.
yeah.
Yeah, it sounds really interesting. Also to create the awareness that all these solar panels are here. Frauke also has a question, whether you have any ideas for follow-up projects already.
For follow-up?
Projects, yeah,
next,
for new
other
projects.
projects
Yes,
related to that.
so we have experiment and didn't publish during the elections last year using speech to text and no, text mining of tweets and Facebook posts from candidates. So to try to make word clouds or of topics that they were talking about, but we couldn't get to the deadline. It was like an experiment. Let's hope for the next time we use that, we can make the deadline, no? But you have to experiment and try, and the next time is going to be better. And now we are part of an international collaboration organized by the London School of Economics. It's called Journalism AI Collab. We are 20 newsrooms from South China Morning Post to La Nación in Argentina and many countries from Europe. So we are divided in 5 teams with different challenges, going from fighting a bias with AI, like bias in our own reporting, two smart tools for newsroom production, or how to try to get more subscribers with AI help. And there is a newsletter that you can sign up. And so the leaders of this collaboration, one name is Mattia Peretti and Charlie Becker, I think, Charlie Becker. Oh, I forgot his first name, but you can Google Journalism AI Collab, and we are going to publish all our research there. So it's difficult. You have to partner like with other newsrooms, with startups, and hopefully with universities. Because if you make a partnership with a university professor, like when every year he had a new bunch of students, they can still work on a project, and maybe the students can publish, like Mattia. Mattia came to La Nacion and we worked in this project, and he published in La Nacion, being a PhD candidate from the University of Navarra. No? So for NGOs, transparency NGOs, or activists of certain topics and journalism, it's impossible to pay for expensive data scientists, processing power tools. So definitively collaboration is your word, open collaboration.
And I think answer the next question. And I want to add, because La Nacion is very well known because of collaboration, not only with other people, but also with students. They every year they have one student from Northwestern University. They have from universities, Argentina universities. They also know because of their collaboration with the public. They had a lot of cases. They use crowdsourcing to publish stories and volunteering, so they know how to collaborate and they believe on that, right?
Yes, we have journalists from Letams in Switzerland, students from Madrid, from the Masters of Data and Visualization, I think the university is Juan Carlos. Yes, yeah. And from Austria also, like we host with a proper legal contract within our human resources department and a university or a newsroom that apadrinar, I can get the word in, like presents the candidate to La Nacion data, like, so we host up to 3 months also.
Wow,
so if you're interested, we can talk. But I will need to make the conversation with a university or a newsroom that wants to make the collaboration.
Okay, cool to hear that it's already this broadly accepted by universities. I had a follow-up question where he asked, who is financing your current AI project, or do you finance it all by yourself?
So still we are using our own resources, or the resources, for example, for the solar panels of the Nacion labs, the computing power, processing power, startup. So it's good to work with universities or startups, so you can share the burden of the finance, because it can be expensive. And universities has large processing computers, and they have maybe good arrangement with Amazon for hosting the information. So, and of course, there are grants that you can apply. No, so Pulitzer Center is at United States. Is I have a friend, the executive editor has been also part of my JSK fellowship at Stanford, Marina Walker, and they are funding journalism projects, collaboration maybe with different newsrooms. And if you say that you want to apply AI to try to, for example, discover the migrations due to climate change, or different journalism subjects, you can go there. They can give you up to $10,000 for the project. And also Google has funded with the Google News Initiative some projects, and the International Center for Journalists, and I don't know if the EGC in Europe have some grants also, I think so.
Europe.
And
Probably
yes,
not.
in Europe. And for the Pulitzer Center, you can be based international. So you don't need to be a US if it's a like a public service, because
Yeah.
you could be reporting on Africa, for example.
Okay.
No, so I think it's good that you have an idea, you make the alliances with whom you would work, and you propose to these grants to get the funding.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. I think that answers the question. I think time-wise, it's best if we move on to our last question, which is from Blanca. Well, it's an interesting project. And the question is, how could you know whether the solar farms were operational or not? Did you see it on a map, or did you use external or
No,
additional?
we use the leather journalism like call, we know,
Yeah.
like with other sources. We couldn't detect that with the eye.
No.
Yeah, we only could detect if it was constructed. For example, we could detect if it was half of the solar farm done. But the important thing is that we try to, this collaboration that we had in the first day, the data day, that we could have these people that work in the auditions, work in the project, so they could provide some data for us, and they could help us to find when was supposed to operate, and the people who was in charge of these installations, and then check if they were working or not. So yeah, we have a lot of investigative journalism as well, not only using the technology.
Oh, that's cool.
I just paid the presentation in the chat.
Yeah, I see.
So if you're interested, I put links to all the projects shared in the image. You can click, but I also added the link
Yeah.
in text. So I hope I haven't forgotten anyone. No link. So
No, yeah, sure. Thanks for sharing the presentation. So for everyone who's interested, and for the people who are listening afterwards, so not joining this call, we will share this link with you also, so you can see all the information that was shared and click on all the links. So thank you so much, both of you, for your time and the information you shared with us. Personally, I thought it was really interesting. It was really a topic I would like to know more about. I will definitely click on the links you shared. I want to thank all the listeners who were in this call, and also the people who are listening at home afterwards. This call was recorded and will be online next week on our YouTube channel. Yeah, I really hope to see you next time. So bye,
super.
everyone.
Thank you.